Welcome to the Stairway to Heaven. We're coming to you bringing insights into the ever-changing high-frequency currents now bathing the planet and affecting us all. The source of vital information for the evolving human being. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka. Beware the stories you tell. A fascinating tradition found in all cultures is that of storytelling. From indigenous people sitting around the fire listening to the elders tell stories of times past, to modern-day families sitting around the television screen watching the latest Disney release, stories and storytelling have always been a large part of our lives. The stories may appear as record-keeping or simple entertainment, but there are many hidden energetic aspects of stories and storytelling that have a profound effect on our reality and on our lives. You'll often hear me say, everything expresses according to frequency, that frequency creates reality. Each story holds a unique frequency which creates or recreates a reality in the imagination of the listener. Stories are greatly misunderstood and underestimated, as is the power and the function of the imagination. Rather than simply a place of fantasy and fiction, the imagination is our connection to the quantum level, where manifestation begins. All things form first at the quantum level before becoming solid and manifesting physically. The imagination has a two-way communication with the quantum level. One way the imagination communicates with the quantum level can be used as a form of divination. What is taking place at the quantum or energetic level is represented in the imagination through metaphor and allegory, a story, much like a dream or a daydream. When accurately translated, these symbolic stories can relate to the linear mind, the workings of the nonlinear, energetic quantum level of life. This divinational form has been used by shamanic cultures for 50 to 60,000 years and to foretell the future, and is still widely practiced today. All shamanic forms employ an altered state of consciousness known as the shamanic trance, during which the brainwaves of the practitioner drop from the normal waking state of beta to alpha and even theta. This results in the practitioner entering into an interactive dream at will. The interactive dream accesses the imagination, where stories representing activity at the quantum level can be experienced. These stories are then decoded, offering accurate information on future trends and events. Another way the imagination communicates with the quantum level is by building stories. Stories we create in the imagination form a frequency matrix around which the quantum level can dance, creating the outcome we imagine. If we can't imagine a thing, we can't create it. If we can't imagine a thing, we won't recognize it if it's already in form. Through the stories we tell ourselves, we create our personal reality, which can limit or distort our perceptions. An example of this is when a person decides they're always going to be unlucky. That's their story, and they, by golly, are going to stick to it. The belief that they're unlucky builds a story in the imagination, forming an energetic matrix of ill luck that interacts with the quantum level, manifesting the very bad luck they believe in. The perceived reality of bad luck becomes their filter through which the person experiences the events of their lives. Even a neutral event is seen as bad luck and responded to in a negative manner, creating the very negative outcome that was expected. When we add the dynamic of group energy, the plot further thickens. In order to examine this phenomenon, let's look at the nature of sound. Sound, like everything else, expresses according to frequency. When one note is sounded at a particular volume and wavelength, and then another note is added at the exact same volume and wavelength, you might think it would result in twice the volume. In fact, when two notes are expressed at the exact same wavelength and volume, the combined volume increases exponentially, well more than simply doubling. Just so, the more people that believe in and therefore express the frequency of a story, the stronger its influence at the quantum level, and the more likely it is to manifest. This is the power of propaganda and is widely used by advertising, media, and politics. A confident storyteller can create an energetic reality so complete it becomes an entity unto itself, an alternate reality, if you will. In order to do so, the storyteller creates a story in their own imagination in such detail they begin to believe it themselves, a skill also employed by effective liars and con artists. Agreed upon stories hold a frequency that over time impacts the very DNA of the culture. Epigenetic studies are revealing that the stories and beliefs of the ancestors are imprinted onto the DNA and passed down the genetic line. These energetic imprints have been carried for generations, recreating the reality they represent, further strengthening the belief therein. Considering all of this, it's easy to see why it's important we're ever so mindful of the stories we tell our children, and even more mindful of the stories we tell ourselves. When delving into the impact our personal and collective stories have had on us for generations, it's hard not to go into despair, seeing ourselves as the hapless victims of ancestral and personal stories that have railroaded our genetics and our lives. In past lower frequency times, this has been the case. Now, however, as the ambient frequency is rising, everything is becoming more mobile and malleable. We have the rare opportunity to use the very things that have entrapped us to transmute our experience. Another interesting property of sound is that when two notes of identical volume with equal but opposite wavelengths are sounded, they cancel each other out, resulting in silence. Sure, we all have the option of sticking to our old stories and that of our ancestry. On the other hand, we can choose to climb the frequency ladder, the stairway to heaven, reframe our perceptions, engage our imagination, and write new stories that can recreate our lives. Should we choose to do this, it'll not only impact us, but our ancestors and descendants. For, once again, to quote Khalil Gibran, humanity is a river of light running from ex-eternity to eternity. Yet how do we uncover our personal stories and those programmed into our DNA? It's not as simple as it sounds, for these stories are so deeply interwoven into our perceptions and experience, we don't even recognize them. Introspection and observation is the key. Listen carefully to the words that go through your mind. Repeated phrases can be a real giveaway as to what we're unconsciously telling ourselves. We may find we're repeating tapes of negative things we were taught to believe about ourselves or the world at large. Anytime you hear thoughts starting with I am, I'm not, never, always, consider it a red flag. For instance, I'm never going to pass that test tomorrow, or I'm always the one getting blamed. These simple thoughts are creating your reality. Keeping a journal of the phrases or stories that go through your head is a very effective way to start making them conscious. Then you can write and repeat equal but opposite statements and stories whenever you catch yourself thinking the negative ones. An example, when you hear yourself think, I'm never going to pass that test, immediately state 3 times out loud, of course I'm going to pass that test easily. Another red flag is worry. When we worry, we take the events of the past, superimpose them onto the present, and make a rerun out of the future. A prime example of this is the belief in lack and the fear that we'll not have enough to make ends meet. When we're in this mindset, we'll not see provisions for our own support appearing under our very noses. Writing a phrase to counteract the feelings of lack, such as, life takes care of me, I'm abundantly supported, and repeating it every time worry rears its ugly head, can counteract this story. It's very effective to accompany the phrase with thoughts of times that was clearly the case. So, let me tell you a story of a time soon to come, bringing the transformation of humankind. As the ambient frequency of the planet rises, providing more light, each person in their own way unearths the hidden stories that bind them. These stories are dismantled by composing equal but opposite stories of freedom and empowerment. Soon the community starts to resonate with the frequency of the new story and transmute the cultural stories of victimhood, lack, and bondage to ones of freedom, creativity, and enlightenment. The new tone goes viral, broadcasting across the planet. In the face of high-frequency uplifting control, through old propaganda cannot stand. Let me tell you a story of freedom and enlightenment, to take into your heart, into your imagination, that together we can make it so real, we dream it into manifestation. To quote John Lennon, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. Thank you for joining me, Gwilda Wiyaka, on the Stairway to Heaven. Until next time, may you be blessed on your sacred path to wholeness. We are here. The time is now.